All right, cool. So we're gonna be going over app users 2. I actually don't have an app users 1, so I might kind of code that up quickly. So let's see if they have anything for us. All right, app users, we should be able to knock that out pretty quickly. So let me clone down app users 2. Oops. App users 2. So here we're going to be kind of adding on to what you guys started yesterday. All right, so I copy the URL. Let me clone that down. That's not where I wanted it. Let's git clone. There we go. All right, so we're going to bring up a coding window here. All right, so we have this user file. We want to add our user file. So I'm going to do app users 1 pretty quickly. If there's any questions, please let me know. If I miss anything, also let me know. But I think we just need a def init. We need to store some data here. I think it was username. Let's double check. We need name, email address, driver's license, you name it. So we'll do name, email. I guess they want driver's license, so okay. Driver's license. All right, we'll stick with that. If we want to add anything else, we probably should be able to. Self.name equals name. Self.email equals email. And self.dl equals driver's license. All right, so those are 3 pieces of information that were suggested. Create a few users. We don't need to do that right now. All right, if we need anything else, we definitely add that here. So we have class user, and then let's get to app users 2. So app users 2, we had an application that blew up overnight, which is awesome. Now we want to modify our original user class. We want to add a method to our user that allows us to create a new user post. Add any necessary instance properties to make step 1 work. What data structure will you use? Add a class variable. Okay, so let's do part 1 here. We want to add a method to our user class to allow creating for a new post. So it seems like we're going to get something that's going to spit back a post out of this. So again, there's many ways to go about this. We saw Guillermo's code a bit earlier. I'm going to go approach this the way I would. And again, I'm kind of OOP centric minded right here. So let's give that a try. So this is something we're going to be covering more today, but we're going to be talking about code organization. Generally speaking, you want to have 1 file per class that you're creating. Now, I know we've not necessarily been doing this with our examples just because it's good to see all the code up on the screen at the same time. But I'm going to start doing that with today. So I'm going to create a new file. And I'm not sure where that file went. New file. All right. I'm going to call this post.py. All right. So this post is going to store my post data. So I'm going to create a new class. Call it post. Let's do a def init. Takes in self as always, and then what attributes do a post have? I think title, body, and author.
Author.
Yep. If there's anything else, again, we can add that later, but let's initialize our structure here. So self.body will be the main content, and then obviously, yes, we want an author. Okay, so we have post here. Right now, there's no other methods, but this is basically our data structure to store this together. Again, you could have just used a dictionary. You could have maybe stored this in some other manner, but again, since we're talking about OOP, I think it makes sense. So again, the way I go about it is if you think about the real world, think about tangible objects, right? So a user or like a human is like one individual object. A post is something else that can exist outside of a user. So it doesn't needs to necessarily be part of the user directly. But we are going to associate them together. And I think the directions are asking for us to store the post somewhere too. But the way I'm going to go about this is create my post class, and then in my, let's see, user class, let's from post import post. All right, so now we have two separate files. Again, each class gets its own file. Now we have post here. So again, following directions, it seems to imply that we need to, or not imply, it tells us we want a method that creates a new user post. So what I'm going to do here is say create new post. I'm going to need to pass in a title and the body, but the author is going to be me. As in, if I call, Encore create new user post, it's going to assign me as the author. Is the way I'm approaching this. Again, you guys might have interpreted it a little differently, which is totally fine. Let me know if you guys have any other thoughts or if I'm kind of going about this the wrong way. So I'm going to create a new post. So I'll do p equals new post. The post takes in title, body, and self.name, right? Because self, I'm assuming that if I call create name on a particular instance, that user is going to be the author of it. And then I want to return post out of here. All right, so we return that. And then I think that takes care of step one. Again, my decision was to make this post class that stores all the relevant post information. And then to fulfill the requirements, I create a method that simply creates a new post, automatically attaches our name as the author, and then returns that post. So we could do something with that post, perhaps. Adding necessary properties. Okay, so I'm gonna maybe, so it looks like add a class variable to store all the posts from our user. All right, we'll follow directions. So this is gonna be a class level attribute. And basically the job of this is to kind of aggregate all the posts that might get created. So what sort of data structure do we want here? I'm thinking there's a couple ways we go about this. Let's go with a dictionary. Again, I was thinking list initially, but I might want a quick way to kind of access items. So I'm going to do posts by author. Again, I'm not quite sure why we need to embed this inside of our user class, but again, just following directions here. And then this will be an empty dictionary. All right, so when we create a post, we probably want to append into that dictionary or insert into that dictionary. So I will do something like if self.name in self.post by author dict. Or again, we use self and we're using a class level attribute. So up here, this is a class attribute, right? Because it's shared by all classes versus these are instance attributes. So let's kind of comment that. All right, so I can call self.post by author dict, and that's going to refer to the class level item. The reason being is because there's no instance level item called post by author dict. Now, if I want to be explicit about it, I could just straight up put user here so that it's always going to look for the class level one. It's never going to look on the instance. Now, again, this comes back down to what makes the most sense. So in this case, I'm thinking, I don't think each instance is ever going to need something called post by author dict, as in it's not going to aggregate on itself. So I'm just going to straight up call the class here. All right, so it's going to use the class level attribute. And then if it exists, I will add on to it. So user, we'll do user post. And then the key I'm going to use here, so maybe I should kind of comment this to make sure we all know what we're working with. My intention here is that this is going to be a dictionary with lists. Key will be author, value. All right, so that's what I'm intending here. So we're going to have a key value pair, the key being each author. So we aggregate by author. Again, we don't have to do this. We just make this a list, but I think this might make it a little easier for us. So our key is self.name, and our value is going to be, we're going to append our new post that we just created up here. So create new post instance, and then add post to our collection. All right, so the first item is checking if we're already inserted before, we should be able to kind of append to that list. Otherwise, we need to create a new list and append to that. So I'll do user post 6. Let me give us more space here. Any questions as I'm coding along here? Please ask if I've confused you guys in any manner. All right, so user posts, same key.
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Yep.
Can you just go over again the difference between using user and self in that situation? When would you use self? Like user makes sense because it's a class instance, but when would you use self?
Right here, are you asking about right? But right
Yes.
Here? Yeah, cool. Yeah, absolutely. So I decided as a developer that it made sense to call user instead of self. Now, as I have it right now, both are going to do the same exact thing. When you put self here, what Python's going to do is it's going to look for this attribute on the instance. When we talk about instance, we're looking at instance attributes like this. So Python will look for something with that name. So it's looking for a variable with that name as an instance attribute. If it does not find it, then it's going to look at the class level. So in this case, we don't have anything called self.post by author right here, right?
Yeah.
So in this case, it's going to automatically go back up to the class level and find what we're looking for. The difference between putting self here and putting user here is that I as a user or as a developer I'm saying explicitly only use a class level attribute, never look at the instance level. So hypothetically, if some other developer or even myself created a post by author dictionary on the instance level, for my needs, I'm saying this is the master collection, never use anything else. As in, this is always going to have all the posts. Now, again, that's a design decision I made that could be the wrong decision down the line, as in like maybe eventually we start adding a dictionary on each user that tracks each of their posts. Who knows? But right now, I decided user was the way to go for me. Because
in this situation, oh, sorry, is there so really just more of a decision in this case, but there really would be no difference between the decision is in a better method or a better way. None would be looked at as like any differently than that, right?
Correct. Yeah, especially for what we're doing right now, both are going to do the same exact thing. I wouldn't say one's necessarily better than the other because again, we don't have this fleshed out as like a full application. That might kind of dictate which one we want to do. But for now, it just made sense in my head to call the class directly rather than going to the class level attribute through self.
It just avoids, yeah, it seems like it avoids confusion. So you know pretty much you're going exactly where you intend on going versus trying to maybe going somewhere else first. So
yep. Okay, let's kind of talk about this dictionary because I want to make sure we understand our data structures. So again, accessing the class level attribute here, the key is going to be the author name, which is the user's name. We're doing two different things here. The first, this if statement is checking if the key exists in the dictionary already. So we're checking if there's an entry that we created already. If there is, we're assuming it's a list because that's the way we've intended to store our data. And we're just going to append that post that we just created. Otherwise, we're going to add a key. So this actually will insert a key for us. It's not super clear that that's what's going on, but doing this will actually add a new key and then add a value to it. The reason we could do this is because this is on the left-hand side of the equal sign. So we're writing to a value. This is the same principle as if we're doing x equals 9, right? We're creating x on this line and assigning to it. That is the same thing that's happening here with this dictionary. We're creating a new entry in the dictionary and then writing a value to it. In this case, we're creating a new list and we're inserting post as the first entry in there. All right, so that's what we're doing. So if it exists, append. If it doesn't, create a new list and add that in there. All right, and then if we need to, we can return the post. So return new post. All right, so that's my create new post. Let me know if you guys have any thoughts about that method. Okay, let's see what's next. Add a class variable, what data structure should you use? Again, this was my decision. I use dictionary. I think, you could totally use a list and that would work. It just required a little more searching if you need to do some items for it. Make sure that the information stays in sync. I'm not sure what that quite means, so I'll kind of skip over it. All right, bonus. Add a method that allows for deleting a post. Again, make sure that your information stays in sync. All right, so deleting a post. I assume we'll be deleting by title. Normally speaking, especially when we get into data modeling and databases, you'll, for the most part, always have an ID because titles aren't as reliable and not easy to look up. But we'll do it by title, assuming that each title is going to be unique, right? It's theoretically possible that 2 different articles could have the same title, but we're just going to ignore that case for now. So let's create a runner file, runner.py, and this will import.
Arthur, I have a quick question.
Yep.
You said that in real application, deleting by title would be inefficient. But if you're creating a dictionary, can you just delete by key?
Again, depends how your dictionary is structured. So the way I have it structured, I cannot delete by a title because I don't have title as a key. I would need to change my data structure. So instead of doing a dictionary of lists, I would probably want a dictionary with dictionaries in there where the title is a key. But yeah, again, there's many ways to kind of structure this, as there's not necessarily one right way. So my runner file is going to be kind of the one creating some items. So let's create a few users. Let's say, since I just talked to Michael, I'll add Michael as a user. Let's keep a last initial. Email, we're going to just assume Mike's email is mike@Platoon or at blah.com. And then driver's license number. Michael, do you have your driver's license number memorized by any chance? I'll assume that's a no. I'll just type in some stuff. If I got that right, that'll be amazing. But yeah, that's going to be driver's license. I don't even know if that's the correct number of digits. How long is driver's license number supposed to be? 10 digits or 9 or what? Anyone know?
New York, I think.
What was that?
I think it's 9 in New York.
Okay, yeah, it might be different by state even. So we'll go with 9. So 333. I know my license starts with an S. Again, I don't know if that's state specific, but whatever. All right, so we have Michael K. Let's create a couple other users. Who else do we have here? Oops, that's not Zoom is really weird about positioning sometimes. All right, let's go with Sean. So Sean will be another user. String, and Sean's driver's license number is obviously 001002003. Hopefully I got that right. Let's get one more user in here. Good to have 3. I talked to Seth earlier, so Seth, you are now in my program. So Seth T, Seth at blah.com. I wonder if blah.com is actual site. I bet someone's registered it. I don't know if there's anything on there. I've never checked. Maybe I'll do that in my break, but all right, 444-555-666. All right, cool. We got some users here, and then let's put initials on there, maybe a little easier to read. Okay, so we got 3 users. Let's create a few posts. So Michael, what are some topics you like maybe reading about or writing about even, or any hobbies or passions, anything that you're interested in?
Learning to code Python.
All right, so we're gonna create a post. We're going to create from the user since we have a method to do that. Michael K is going to create new user post. The title will be learning Python, and we're going to keep the body short here. So we'll say classes are fun to work with in Python. Not a great article here, but we'll just do that. So all right, so Michael K created a post. So let's store that as P1. Let's create another post. Sean, what's something you're interested in reading about or hobbies or anything that you might have read lately?
Fantasy football.
All right. I've tried fantasy football a couple years. I actually found it took away my enjoyment for watching football, so I stopped doing it. But I mean, I do enjoy competition. I feel like other sports are better suited for it. Like I've done fantasy basketball just because, again, there's more statistical reliability because you have so many more games from our events. I feel like football is more variable, but sorry, that was a tangent. Create new post. fantasy football 2001. Let's say the best dark horse draft pick this year is, Sean, do you happen to have a good dark horse draft pick that's been working out well for your team, or just someone that's blown up that no one expected?
No, not at all this year.
We'll say Kyler Murray, even though he's not like a dark horse. A lot of people expect him to do well, but actually, let's pick Matt Stafford. He's a former Lion. I grew up in Michigan. He's doing well now. So we'll go with him. Yeah,
What about Josh Allen? Like he was later on at first.
he's doing well too. Yeah, all right. So we'll do, and then Seth Thomas is going to create an article. What is it? Oops, P3 equals Seth. And we were talking about Mount Rainier earlier, so I think Seth will write an article about that, detailing experience, my journey to Mount Rainier. And then this will be a short article also. It was great. Missed seeing as much snow as before. All right, these are our articles. So the question is, I guess, verifying number 4, are we getting our information? And I think this was a question I think Seth had, but the question was maybe how do we access class level attribute? So class level attribute, we just use the class name. So if you do user and posts, that should print out some items here. However, I just remembered I forgot something. I'm going to run this and then we'll kind of add on to that. Okay, so I'm going to run Python runner apply. All right, we got an error post. That's not author. Okay, we can fix that. Oops, I did not complete that. That is why. Okay, so we get some stuff spit out here. Notice we see Michael K, Sean F, Seth T, but we don't really see anything too interesting here. Can anyone tell me why I'm kind of seeing this and how to maybe fix that?
You can add a repr.
Repr, yes, that's one of the donor methods. I'm thinking of a different one.
And then your string. But if you implement repr, it'll implement string also.
Oh, cool. Okay, yeah, I have not really used repr, but I'm going to stick to string just to not confuse anyone. But yeah, so repr is another way that you can kind of convert something to a string. But here I want to just print out something that's a little more readable. So let's do return an F string. That's going to be the title. I can type self dot title. And then let's put these on new lines. So I'm not gonna put the body in there, let's put the author. This body can get kind of long. Author will be self dot author. Okay, let's see if that makes it a little better. Clear my console, run that again. Nope, still got that because all right.
It's because what Kevin is saying about repr is right for this case. I was playing with this yesterday. I'd use repr because it doesn't call the string method whenever it's printing out just an object or a dictionary like that.
Gotcha. All right. Fair enough. I'm just gonna circumvent that by printing out in a loop. So user in print. Sorry, these toolkits always can get in my way. All right, we're gonna print each post. All right, let's see if that looks a little better. Nope, still post. What am I doing wrong here? I think I screwed something up. So print this object, string, return something. So this should get me back a post. Oh, I know why. I know why. Sorry. So this is a list. Yeah, a list will not automatically print that out. So for each post in our list, or not post. All right, so let me add another dunder method for my user. That's just simply going to print out. I'm just going to return the username. So we'll do f string self dot name. Okay, and make sure I get rid of this again. All right, I think that should take care of it. So hopefully we see something a little more nice in our terminal. All right, there we go. So if I bring this up, we have Michael K. He has one entry. So he has a title, and obviously the author is him. Let's get rid of that space. All right, let's add a few more articles just to make this a little more exciting. So Michael K, got any other topics for us? All right, we're gonna have learning JavaScript. JavaScript is, okay. And then let's say Sean, 2, 3, 4. I'll create them down here. So let's say Sean creates another one. Sean F creates. Sean, do you have any fantasy football busts from your team?
Anything involving New England?
Okay, fair enough. Any Patriots player? Avoid. Okay, and then let's keep it at that. So if we check out our dictionary now, hopefully I updated. So yeah, it looks like our data is being managed properly, as in our user.post by author dictionary is keeping track of all the posts we created internally, right? We're not adding it manually outside of the class. The class is handling that for us. And we've talked about that's idea of encapsulation, as in or abstraction, where the class is kind of doing work for us. We don't care how it's doing it. We just know that it's maintaining our data the way we expect it to. So we're getting all our posts. That looks good. Looks like I forgot a G on learning. All right, cool. And then now the last challenge was, I guess that's what we're working on, is allowing us to delete a post. Okay, so as we talked about earlier, we're going to use the title as our key or identifier because we're going to delete by title. So to that, I'm going to add. Now, there's a couple ways we could do this. We could do an instance method, or we could do a class level method. So if our titles were unique completely, we could add a method on a class level. So let's do that. So def delete post by title. And this is something we've not talked about before, but let's talk about it now. So you can add class level attributes. So we've talked about class level attributes, instance level attributes, and we talked about instance level methods. So we've covered 3 of those, but we can also have class level methods. So just to reiterate that, since I butchered it, we know the difference between a class level attribute and an instance level attribute. Hopefully that is kind of sound. We've talked about creating instance methods, which we've done here, like create new post. But you can also have a class level method. To do that, you will add a decorator called class method. The parameter for this will be CLS. Again, that's by tradition, you will name it CLS. Again, you can name that whatever you want, but this is going to refer to the class. So like user will be the class there. And then let's pass in the title. So here, oops, that is not JavaScript. So delete post by title. We can go through all of our items here. And let's do a for loop for user. Okay, so we're gonna search through our dictionary, and I'm realizing now that our dictionary isn't the best structure for what we're doing right now. So for post and if post equal title, post dot title. We want to delete it, so we're gonna delete it from here, and I need to actually double check this. We probably can just delete from list using, I think I need an index, right? Yeah, so make use of enumerate, so we could have an index. We get a post also, so post that title equal title. We want to remove this title, so pop index and deleted post. And maybe let's print something out to the terminal. So do print, well, let's actually return it. Return deleted post. So again, we're going to assume there's at most one article by a given title. If not, we'll return none. All right, so we're going to pass it a title, and then it should delete it and return it, and then we can display what got deleted. So
Hunter, can you explain the CLS real quick?
yeah, definitely.
What was that again?
So for instance methods, we talk about the self keyword. So when an instance calls your method, self will refer to that particular instance. In that same manner, when you have a class method, when you call this, CLS will refer to the class. So if I do something right here, if I call user dot delete post by title, I'm just going to pass it the title. So let's do p5 dot title. That should delete Sean's latest post about fantasy football 2001 or 2021 busts. All right, so I'm not passing in the class here. So this should give us back deleted post. And then let's print out the post that got deleted. All right, so there's a couple ways you can do this. I went with class attribute or class method. We could do this without a class method. Again, I'm not sure which one would make the most sense. Depends on our use cases. But let's.
Okay, I have just one more question.
Go for it.
How do you know to write a class method as opposed to just an instance that deletes a post? How do you know to do that?
Yeah, so it comes down to how is your application actually going to be calling these methods? And we'll talk about maybe the alternate way where we might want to have an instance method. But let me kind of get this running, and then we'll definitely talk about it.
Okay.
And if you have any questions, please do ask. All right, so let's run this. Let's see if there's any errors, which there always can be. Yep, we got key error 1. So this is a great lesson in reading error messages. So we were able to print out our dictionary right here. We got an error. So looking at this, looks like we had an issue with our pop. And then it says user line 12. So I'm going to go to line 12. And it looks like, yep, that's where the error was. So this is a great opportunity for me to kind of talk about debugging. So normally we use console logs, kind of print out values, see what we're dealing with. But I'm actually going to use the Visual Studio Code Debugger. I don't think that's something we've done too much of or at all. So let's try to do that here, and maybe we can spot our error. So the first thing I'm going to do is add a breakpoint. So if you saw, I clicked in this gutter area here, and there's a bright red dot here. That means there's a breakpoint set there, so that when we execute the code through Visual Studio, when we get to this point, the application will actually pause, and we could see what values we have in this context. So let me try running this. So the steps to go about running this would be go to your run menu in Visual Studio Code, go to start debugging. And then it's going to ask you, what are you trying to launch? I'm trying to launch a Python file. And click that. All right, it's going to do its thing. And, oh, sorry, I don't want to run my user file. I want to run my runner file. That was my mistake. Because again, my user file is just a class. There's no code that's actually being executed. So I'm going to go to my runner file, go to start debugging. And okay, cool. So look at my terminal, notice that I got my dictionary printed out. So looking at the runner file, this was what printed out that dictionary. Then we called delete post by title. And so that is where we are right now. So if we go to our breakpoints, sorry, notice that we stopped on that line because I added a breakpoint. And now we are able to see everything that we have in our context. So looking at our variables, looks like the value of I is 1. Notice we have a post here. That post is fantasy football. So it looks like it found the article we're looking for, right? Because we're deleting article 5. Article 5 is Sean's article about fantasy football busts. And that is what we chose to delete here by calling p5.title. So it looks like we found the article, great. But the issue here that I'm noticing is that I is equal to 1. If this, so I1, let's actually check our list. So if we, let's see, check out posts, nope. All right, class variable, let's check out what our dictionary looks like. So we have our post dictionary. Sorry, trying to navigate this. Collapse some of these. All right, so we have our class variables on there. All right, so in function variables, we have delete post by title. So that's where I'm going to dig into. This, all right, can be an adventure. I'm just trying to find what we have stored in here. Posts, oh, there we go, that's what I want. All right, post by author dictionary. Notice we have 3 entries. We have Michael K, Sean F, and Seth T. Again, I'm using a debugger so I can actually see what's stored in here, rather than having to do a bunch of console logs and kind of restarting my application each time I want to check out something. So Michael K, I want to look in Sean's article list, right? Because that's where we added. Notice we have 2 entries. The first one is the best dark horse draft pick is Matt Stafford. Second one is any Patriots player. All right, so that's the article. It is at index 1. So everything looks to be correct. Let's try to figure out why this might be going wrong. So I'll go back to my error message and try to check that out. Let's see what it said. Looks like I lost that. Oh, no, might be in bash, right. So the error message I got was key error 1. So why am I getting a key error 1? This index exists.
Something to do with mutating the array while iterating over or something like that?
Yeah, that can be an issue if we continued, but since we're returning, I don't think that should get us. So we definitely found the article. Oh, I see. That is my goof, but I think I noticed it. So right here, the dictionary does not have an item I, it's the list that has it. So I forgot to index my list. Sorry, not index my list, but access by key. So user is my key, and that's going to give me a list that has indices on it. So that is my goof. So I'm going to stop this. Again, debugging, very useful. I hope eventually you guys get in the habit of using the VS Code debugger. The only thing different you got to do is instead of using your terminal to launch your file, you need to use a run menu so that the VS Code debugger attaches to your process. Right? But if you don't want to debug, you can simply run it through your terminal as before. So I think I'm good to go now. I'm going to run Python runner. All right, there we go. So this is kind of a mess to see, but first we printed out our dictionary and notice we had Sean's article about fantasy football busts, right? And then we got an information message here that we just deleted fantasy football busts by Sean F. And then if we print out our dictionary again, which we just did, notice that our dictionary no longer has that article. So we successfully removed it from our dictionary, passed it back to the caller, and I think our data is still staying in sync. All right, just to change this up a little bit. So I went with class method here. What if I instead of doing that, decided, well, we're only going to be deleting it through the user, as in, since we're creating a post through the user, we're going to have the same idea of deleting through the user. So instead, not going to make this a class method, this will be an instance method. So I'll take in the self and a title. Now this makes it a little easier for us because we know what the author is. So we don't have to iterate through the dictionary necessarily. We can simply go if self.name not in user delete post by title, we'll simply return none because we know that we don't have any articles. Otherwise, we'll iterate through self.name, and that should be self. And self.name. All right, so the same idea. We're gonna iterate through all the articles for one user and then delete it if we find it. All right, so this is an instance method now. So we only had to pass in the title, and we know what's part of the dictionary we need to search because we have the key already. That's coming from our username. So instead of calling it on the class, I'll do something like Sean F deletes article 5. So again, the difference here is that we have to know the user in order to delete it. The other case was we didn't know the user, or sorry, the author who wrote the article. We just know the title. So if your application only happens to keep track of titles and not the author, well then there's, I guess, multiple ways to do it. This way, if you know the author, or since we have the author stored on the article, we could do something like p5.author.delete, what did I call it? Delete post by title. All right, we could even do it this way. It's kind of roundabout, but remember, we kept track of the author on the article, so we can access the author directly. So we don't need to keep around the user because that's stored on each article. So we did p5.author delete post by title and then pass it the title. We'll do the same thing as line 20. All right, what questions do you guys have about that?
Hey, Ankur, could I ask something real quick? Would you be
Yeah.
able to upload these? Would you be able to upload these to Slack or something like that so I can go through myself and kind of play with them?
Yeah, absolutely. So after we finish lecture here, I'll submit a pull request to app users too with this coding here.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Yeah, I'm not sure what state we'll kind of end up in, but I'll try to. It'll be more.
No worries.
We have right now.
I just want to go through it slowly, kind of play with it a little bit.
Yep.
On the where you had just written the delete post by title function, and I think that was in the user, yeah. In there you called delete, let's see. So it says delete post by title if self.name. So up on line 27.
Yeah, you got me.
Okay. Okay, good. All right.
Thank you.
I was confused. All right, thank you.
That was my mistake. Yep, we want to search the dictionary, not the method, right? The method's called delete post by title. Yep, good eyes. Glad you guys are catching my mistakes. And I will say, all the time when I'm coding and I mistype something, refer to the wrong thing, you guys are great at spotting those errors. And that makes me feel good that you guys are able to kind of understand the code and also pick out errors. That means you are understanding kind of the general ideas we're trying to convey here. Okay, so that is my app users too. Again, definitely a few more items we had to add compared to app users 1, namely adding some instance methods, the idea of a post. Again, I chose to create a post class. You didn't necessarily have to, but again, the OOP kind of design mindset, hopefully you guys are kind of thinking about creating these objects as we need to use them. So I have a post class, a user class, and per directions, we're storing one data set or data structure for all the posts inside of our user class. Again, that's not necessarily something I would necessarily automatically gravitate towards. Like I'd probably store all the posts here instead of it in the users, but again, that's just subjective. All right, any questions about app users 2? Anything else you guys want to discuss? Anyone else want to show what they did for app users 2 and maybe ask questions or just anything?
Ankur, when you created the extra post file, is that best practice when you create a new class to generally have it in a different file? And then
Yes.
just import it and export it?
Yep, absolutely. So we again, as our challenges or projects get larger, file organization or code organization is going to be more and more important. In fact, one of our assessments in the future is going to focus, have some criteria for code organization. But yeah, generally speaking, have one file per class. Again, this is a rule of thumb. It's not 100% all the time rule. I know someone else in the past asked about naming conventions. I usually will name class files in with capital. And I probably would not use snake case. So I would use camel case because that's how the class name is going to be. And this is something from React. React kind of goes about this naming convention also. But yeah, generally one class per file or one file per class. And yeah, you import and export as needed. So my user class needed to use post because we're creating a post here. So I imported here. And then my runner file needed both of them. Looks like I'm not actually using post here because we're calling create new post. So I guess I get rid of that. Okay.
I have a
That,
question.
yep, Mary, go for it.
Yeah, you skipped over the syncing part. So does that mean just by design, like classes and inheritance and everything syncs automatically?
Yeah, so for app users 2, there's this step 4, make sure
Mhm.
information syncs. Yes, that's more of a verification. There's nothing we needed to necessarily add or change in our class. So I think step 4 should really just be make sure everything works. But
Okay.
yeah, in this case, the way I identified it being working correctly is where, you know, we created some users, created some posts, and then I print out my dictionary. So again, me in my runner file, I have not manually touched user.post by author dictionary, right? But my class, my user class is managing that dictionary. So when I, you know, went through that dictionary and printed everything out, I verified just visually that everything is in sync. Obviously, we could add test cases and a test suite to maybe, you know, do that a little more robustly here. But I kind of just saw, yeah, when I created articles, they were correctly inserted into my dictionary. And likewise, when I deleted items, my dictionary was updated also. So to me, that kind of verifies that everything's synced in terms of I'm not losing an article when I create one. It gets stored and I can access it as needed.
Okay, great.
Is there somewhere where there's some kind of notes about how class methods, instance methods work? I couldn't find it in the lecture.
Yeah, we have not gone over that. I think I want to say either tomorrow or Friday we'll talk about that a little more in detail. But if you're looking for Googling terms, there are 3 different types of methods that you can have in classes. One, which we've talked about a lot, are instance methods, and these are methods that take in the self parameter and basically are dependent on each instance. So like, for example, create new posts depends on self.name, and that's gonna be unique for each instance that calls this method. Then you have class methods. Class methods don't care about each individual instance, but care about something about the class. In this case, when I created that class method, it was because I needed post by author dictionary, which is a class attribute. The third type, which we won't talk about much, are static methods. Static methods, for all intents purposes, they're just functions that sit inside your class, but they don't depend on any class data or instance data. They're kind of just like helper functions. Like a silly example, which wouldn't make much sense, I could have a static method and use this static method decorator. We haven't talked about decorators too much, but you need to have a static method decorator. I could say def get name or get class description. And then this will take in nothing. It won't take in self, it won't take in CLS. It's just a regular function as if it existed outside of this class. But the reason it's in this class is because it's related to the class in some manner. So I'll just return a class that stores right. So again, this function does not care anything about, instance attributes nor class level attributes. This is just a function related in some manner to the user class. So I've created a static method. Again, it's just a random function that I might use for something. So again, we have instance methods, class methods, and static methods.
I was just kind of curious. Yesterday, I think me and Luke kind of accidentally did this, but we didn't use that static method notation. We just didn't pass self. So are we just doing the same thing, but just without the wrong notation?
I'm not sure actually. My understanding is you do need the static method decorator, but I could be wrong about that.
You should get an error because it's gonna, if you don't have the static method decorator there, it's gonna try to pass self. It's gonna say, hey, if you call it on the instance, it's gonna try to pass self into it. So.
Yep. Okay. So we'll try to mention these a little bit more, but yeah, I know we have a school interface challenge, and that's probably going to talk more about class methods for sure. So definitely stay tuned. I know we're kind of introducing new topics without necessarily going in depth about them. But yeah, in this case, I chose not to use a class method. I went with instance method to delete post by title, passing in a title, and then we extract the author via self.name. Okay, cool. So that's app users 2. I'm going to stop the recording here.